Welcome to the BX Podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Fowler, and we have another exceptional guest to share their insights and area of expertise with you on the show. Now, just before we jump into the episode, make sure you tap that follow or subscribe button on your favorite podcast app to get more BX Podcast episodes right there in your pocket. Now, if you would like to find out more about BX and attend a meeting either in person or online, head over to bxnetworking.com/locations. That's bxnetworking.com/locations.
Helen Francis is the owner and chief confidant of Colibri Cura, a business centered around providing a safe and supportive space for her clients to understand how to form better relationships with others and themselves through more effective communication strategies. Helen has trained with Australia's top developmental training organisation to become a master neurosemantics NLP practitioner and a cutting-edge Integral Plus coach. Her strong dedication lies in assisting men, driven by her personal experiences in witnessing the struggles they face when they avoid seeking help. Now, men frequently grapple with significant challenges, including elevated suicide rates, which stand as the foremost cause of death for those under 35. These struggles are often accompanied by feelings of depression, isolation, and loneliness, particularly in the aftermath of relationship breakups. And most challenges are linked to beliefs that expressing emotions is a sign of weakness, and the common attitude of, it'll be okay, until it isn't. Helen's goal is to empower men to recognize that they can choose how they present themselves in the world, free from societal expectations of masculinity. Understanding the critical role of growth and development in shaping the future of humanity, Helen is deeply committed to supporting the personal growth of as many individuals as possible. Helen, it is a pleasure to welcome you to the BX Podcast.
Thank you for having me, Ryan.
This is going to be an interesting conversation, I'm very well aware, and one that you feel very passionate about, I know. But before we jump into that, tell me the origins of Colibri Cura. And just quickly, before you do that, I'm gonna say something to the audience here. In that, when Helen sent through her bio, she actually sent me the phonetical,
yeah.
That's a word now. Pronunciation of the business name. So, Ella, tell us how this came about.
I was after a bit of a rebrand, and I wanted something nice and simple, and so ended up with something nice and complicated. But essentially, Colibri is Germanic and Danish and Finnish for hummingbird, and hummingbird is from a Peruvian traditions, is basically the messenger between the earth and the sky. And from a experience I had earlier in the year, the hummingbird became very significant for me in that way. And cura is Latin to care, so it's essentially the caring messenger or messenger of care. Is how that comes about in that space. So yeah.
Okay, that's a very interesting connection between all of those elements into a very simplified, complicated word.
Yeah. It creates a great talking point.
Yes, it does. Well, when I read that was my very first specific question, because I wanted to know the origin of that word. I have to say, it is a great icebreaker, that's for sure, to get the conversation started. Now, let's continue that by understanding a little bit about your journey of how you got into this space of where you are now and why supporting men is such a passion point for you.
That's a very big question and could probably take up the whole time if you let me ramble.
I'll interject every now and then.
So it really originated from my own personal development and growth that in some ways I fell into. I had a lot of depression and anxiety and isolation and loneliness growing up from my family's scenario, and my father wasn't an emotionally available man, and so a whole lot of belief structures arose from that. And so doing the work myself, getting into an NLP course, which I was doing for my boyfriend at the time. So I was like, oh, this will be really handy for you. And I ended up going instead of him. And then I went on a journey to South America again in 2020 at the start. And that provided an opportunity and some space for me to start to understand what I wanted to do in the world and how I wanted to help. COVID hit and the courses all went online, which was to me a sign at the time. And that journey just helped me understand who I was, has shifted my own beliefs and frustrations and frames of reference around who I am and how I need to be and how to be loved in the world. And that became a passion for me to support others and help others to understand and see that, which really ultimately is to help the whole of humanity grow so that we can hopefully survive moving forward in future generations. And where it comes to men is from a societal perspective, women over the last 100 years, the views of women have shifted and changed about how they can show up in society. They can go and get jobs now and choose a whole range of things, which is great and has needed to happen. But at the same time, the evolution for men and the growth of men of who they are as part of society hasn't shifted as much. And so there's still these older expectations that a lot of men have and a lot of women have on men too, which have created some of the differences and conflicts that men and women are facing today. And why men over women? Women have a tendency more to seek help than men do. And so about 75% of personal development is done by women. So for me, I just saw this need for men to get that support that they need because men are important. And we want men who are able to be aware of who they are and not be held by societal's frames of who they should be.
I'm going to say that's a very big mission to implement into the world.
It has been at times a bit of like, oh, that's a very big thing, but the reality, the baseline reality is being able to just support or help one person will have an impact. And for me, although I don't have set people, I do like to support and work with men who are probably a little bit older because they are the fathers of the next generation. And we learn through modelling our parents and the community. So by supporting them in their growth, then they will basically be modelling to their kids the growth and development and the benefits of that.
I love that you brought this up because this ties into a question that I thought of as you were mentioning what you're doing and the generations that you're working with, in that most of your clients are older. There's several generations alive at any one point in time, as we know. Some people have great-grandparents, or some even may be great-great-grandparents. And there's definitely different generational preconceptions of ideas and roles in society. With the people you're working with, how is that breaking that generational gap or preconceived notion of, my father taught me this, now I've acted this way for most of my life, but how am I going to teach my son this? And of course, I'm focusing primarily on men here. This does apply to whatever gender people identify as, but sticking with the conversation on men is, how is this work that you're doing breaking the mold of generational, essentially, role hand down?
It's all apply to self first. And as mentioned, children model from their parents and the people around them. If you look back at sort of all the people growing up around you when you were a child, particularly around sort of between 6 and 9, and the type of people and the role models, and then what attributes you have that they also held. So by men actually doing the work, or anybody really doing the work on themselves, children will see that, and even if they can't articulate it or they don't know what's going on, they're still basically osmosing it. And the whole thing about intergenerational, this is what my family does, this is our traits, it's all learned behavior. So we're not born and have these traits within us. We're taught them from the moment we were born, and we're taught. And then by the age of 6 or 7, we have set programs that we operate from, and then our growth and development sort of is filtered through those programs and how we show up in the world. And it's all based on modeling and growing. So by the men doing it, then the children witnessing it, then it's just showing that those options are available to the children. And the children may or may not adapt them. It's how they process their thoughts internally.
Now, because we like to ask the lightweight questions here on this podcast, apparently, and I think we'll stick with the theme of fairly impactful questions, because in this level of development that you're doing, in this level of self-awareness that you're implementing with people, there's stages of development that you briefly mentioned in our earlier conversation. Can you share with everybody listening, what are these stages of development? And you just mentioned the 6 to 7 year old and the kind of the preconceived patterns. What are the rest of these stages of development that we go through that we might not be aware of?
Okay, that's a very big question.
Keep it light and breezy.
Basically,
that's for sure.
it's a theory that Ken Wilber, I call him a bit of the poster boy for it, because people tend to know him over others, but also the basis from Spiral Dynamics. And so Spiral Dynamics is a good book to reference if anyone wants to listen and understand things, or A Brief History of Everything by Ken Wilber. They can be a bit heavy, but they expand a little bit more on this. But stages of development, basically we all start out at base stage, and we have what's also called levels of development. Now, our levels of development are things like our cognitive intelligence, our emotional intelligence, our stage of moral development, our stage of spiritual development. It can be also our sports and music and a whole plethora. Now, all those stages can be at different levels based on our expertise and our knowledge and our intelligence. And each stage that we are at holds its own values and beliefs structures, which can hinder our ability to understand others who may be at different stage structures. Now, no stage is bad or wrong, because in order to move through them, you need to go through from the bottom. And if you were to remove any of the lower ones, then everything else would cease to exist. So the work I do is really around people understanding their thinking structures, so that cognitive line of intelligence, and then also what other lines of intelligence may be holding them back in order to move through to a different stage. Because it's not like you're at this stage and that's it. It's a bit of I don't know what you call the concave, where it's sort of you have a little bit moving into a higher stage, and the other one, someone described it as a bit like a ladder, a rung, and so you've got to put all the different rings before you can kind of move up. But then there can still be a couple of gaps as one moves through that. That's as basic an explanation of it as I can come up with at the moment.
So as people go through these stages of development, and are there certain applied learnings that create patterns, and this would tie into subconscious patterns and different things? What are some of those learnings that can tie into the patterns and behaviors that we play out into the real world?
Okay, so the patterns that we create, they can be called programmings, beliefs, values, memories, culture, language. They're all filters of how we visualize the world, which in an NLP terminology is what we call our map of reality. So when you look at Google Maps, it's not the actual reality of what the world is. It's a rough estimated guide. Like if you were to go to the street, it's not going to look like the little cartoon character, and the truck's not going to take up the whole road on your Google Maps. It's a little bit the same around our thinking processes. And because there's so much information to process, and this is where the patterns start to form based on our learnings from our parents, and we look for likeness. So I've got a friend's daughter who is very externally driven. She's a very big people pleaser, so she'll go and help that because she's learnt that way she gets praise when she does things that are helpful and good. And so she for her, she's obviously starting to value the external praise from others as a way of valuing herself. So what happens with these patterns is we start to reinforce them. Our brain starts to reinforce them. And what they can then become is what we call sort of a driver program, and all other filters are unavailable. A really interesting metaphor I came up with, it's like you wear a suit to work. When you're a little kid, you've seen this, maybe your father in a suit, and you're like, oh, that's powerful. That's what I want to do. That's what success means, is by being able to wear a suit. So as you start going along, you start wearing suits, and you notice that you are getting attention wearing suits. So you start wearing suits everywhere. You start wearing it when you play sports. You go and start wearing it when you're going in the kids in the sandpit. But what's happening is you're also then frustrating yourself. You're going in the sandpit and you're getting angry at your kid for ripping your suit, and you've got to buy a new suit every day, every week. And so you're getting yourself pissed off, but you won't take the suit off because you can't see any other thing about showing what a sense of achievement you've created. So then it's about getting people to start to see, going, well, look, the suit's really beneficial in these spaces, but perhaps it's not as beneficial playing in the sandpit with your kid. Maybe there is some other type of clothing that is more resourceful in that space, and getting people to basically try that on and see how it works for them. And they might go, oh, this is amazing. Yes, my relationship with my kids is a lot better because I'm not getting frustrated at them, because it doesn't matter if they pour sand in, it's not going to rip and wreck it. Or they might go, you know what, I still prefer wearing the suit and I'm quite happy with that, but I'm not going to get upset because I know it's going to get wrecked, but I still choose to wear it. So it's providing a greater choice for people.
There's two very key themes that I've noticed just come up in the last couple of minutes, really, is the value of questioning and the option of self-choices. So just to break down a little bit more of this questioning part for me, and what is the value of truly questioning the decisions you make, but understanding it with your own self-confidence?
The biggest value is that you take back control of how you want to show up and what you want to do and be in the world, over being controlled by essentially 7-8-year-old self who is navigating based on programming that they developed when they were a kid. And so if you're unaware of it, people are going to be had by it, and they're just going to automatically behave in particular ways and not understand why they are the way that they are, or why they get bothered by certain things, or bothered by other people, or how they show up in the world. So by having that choice, they can then, and looking at it deeply and understanding what's important to them about that, helps them to go, is this something I really want to do, or do I want to change this? And so it's easy to go, I want to be a rock star, I don't want to have millions of fans and do all this sort of stuff. But when you actually look at what that entails and the processes, it's like, is this something that I'm willing to shift and change within myself? Like, what am I willing to do to actually achieve this, rather than just going, I wish I was a rock star, and then occasionally hitting a drum as you walk past it.
And then once you've asked yourself those questions, understand the answers for yourself, what does it feel like when you start to look at choices, understanding that that was the choice that you made, not the one that you were forced into?
It can be challenging taking ownership of those elements and realizing it's not Ryan's fault that I've done this or done that. It's my own, and taking that responsibility. And that can be really confronting for some people. And so this work isn't actually for everybody. It's only for people who are ready to explore that and ready to look at elements of themselves that they may not like very much, because that's what we do. We hide away from elements of ourselves that we don't like to show up in a particular way, which is where we have these masks and these patterns to be essentially to be loved and gain love. And so it's about taking away those masks and really looking at ourselves and going, this is who I really am, and that's okay. Or this is who I really am. I would like to change this. What do I need to do that?
That's a very interesting place to be as a person. It's challenging, that's for sure.
Definitely.
I know that I've done my own levels of personal development, and there's definitely a lot of challenge there. One of the things that I feel would really stop people, and I'd like you to elaborate on this, is, like you mentioned before, that fear of not wanting to face the challenges. What are some other things that stop men from actually showing up to have these conversations with themselves and create an avoidance behavior in acknowledging what might not be working for them so that they can get to the level they want to get to?
And this is a generalization. This obviously doesn't apply to all men, but a lot of it, from my perspective and what I've observed, comes down to the cultural and societal frames and beliefs of what it is to be a man. And that has started to break down a bit, particularly with younger generations. The generation sort of around my age is still has those parents who taught them that boys don't cry, that you just keep up. And it's a very Australian thing. So you find this in a lot of females in Australia as well, have the mentality of it'll be right, it'll be right, it'll be right, it'll be right. And then all of a sudden it isn't. That was something that definitely happened to me when my mum was sick. It was, I pushed myself to the point of collapse. And so it can be this perception of like, if I seek help, I'm weak or I'm vulnerable. And for a lot of men, there's a frame, if I show vulnerability or weakness, then I'm not deemed a man. I'm not able to provide for them, because there's the perception that men are there as providers. They come into the house, they provide, they work. And so along those lines as well, from a society, there's less positions for men to be earning more for that step up. And because women, rightly so, have the now ability to be in those roles, but those frames around men still being the provider are there. And so there's this disparity for some men who aren't in those higher positions of being able to find people that they can be in relationship to.
Mm. And does it affect just relationships or other areas of life as
Everything.
well?
Which essentially is anything that you're doing, you're in relation to. So we're relating to each other right now, having this conversation. There's relation to the systems, which comes down to Ken Wilber's also quadrants of first, second, third, fourth person perspective. So all four are playing out at once, but it's what is being seen or not seen, and how is that playing and how is it being affected. So it can be applied across basically anything.
And for the men who have grown up there, and more specifically for the people that are with them, so it could be kids, it could be partners, it could be best mates, whatever it is, or whoever it is, I should say. Sorry, let me rephrase this. What are some good ways to actually start to open up the conversation in ways that helps them feel supported, that it's okay to seek personal development, seek support, seek coaching? What are some of the good conversation starters that can help bring that up and open up the conversation?
One of the biggest things for men is feeling a sense of shame. There are lots of men who won't talk to even their partners because women are very skilled, even subconsciously, at saying things to men that men will take on as a bit shameful, like even going, oh, can you stack the dishwasher better? Or, you can't do the clean, you clean, but you didn't clean properly enough. And that can lead to bits of shame. And for women, that can sound very silly. It's like, well, it's just normal activities for us. But it's a bit different. And I was thinking about this the other day. I'm not very skilled at a lot of what are deemed male role tasks of like doing woodwork or cutting things or doing those. I'm fascinated by it, but I don't have the skill set to do it. But I noticed that men don't tend to go, oh, you're meant to do it this way. Can't you do it this way? Some will. But it does seem to be a female. So I think the biggest thing for having conversations with men, if noticing anything with them, because they're also very good at hiding, is to make sure that they don't feel that they're going to be shamed if they talk, and having the conversations briefly and just allowing them to know that you're available if needed, and don't push men. I think it's really important not to tell men what to do. Same applies with females. I think it's important that we don't come in with men and go, you need help, you're not, because again, that can create that level of shame of like, there's something wrong with me, rather than, again, it can be lead by example, do the work on self, create open conversations, and just have open conversations about what's going on with self and with others, and allow men to be themselves. Some men won't go and seek help, but it's also around finding the right tribe. For me, I think that's been a big thing for me, is finding the right type of people that support me in my journey of growth and development, and that can shift and change over time as well. So it's not going, this is an amazing person, you need to go and have a session with them. It can be like, I found this person really helpful. You may or may find benefit from them, but they may not be the right person. So it's just being able to support them and be there for them, and doing work on self. And I believe a lot of men get into help through their partners making or suggesting doing stuff, but that can be the other way as well, as just being going, hey, let's go check out this course, or let's go look at this together and do something like that, and just having those conversations, and then accepting whatever the answer is and however they are.
And for the men who have been feeling closed off, knowing that there's something that needs to change, or wanting to find a new way but just don't know what's stopping them, moving through that barrier, what's it like on the other side? Is the grass really greener for relationships or self in how it plays out?
Definitely. Well, and I can only talk from my own experience. It can still be challenging, and at times it can be challenging as one's going through the processes. You might be aware. For me, I played a lot of judgment of like, oh, I'm playing that out again, I'm doing that again. And once I let go of that judgment of self and going, oh, I'm actually recognizing this pattern, it then allows that space and kind of flexibility and choice. And for me, the end result is an inner sense of calmness and contentment at no matter what the scenario is, and notice, and I'm now able to notice and myself reacting to a degree, and be able to kind of go, oh, okay, there's that, all right. And I can have a bit of a laugh. I have a laugh at myself when I notice it. But yeah, it does, because it just transforms relationships. It can be difficult because some relationships may end, some circumstances may change, but that's, again, evolution and growth, and that's okay, and learning to be okay with those spaces and it just, for me, it's just so much more peaceful. It's the best word.
And even going through this process, I know that we've gone into a fairly heavy topic here, and it's it's quite a weight to take on. I'm well aware of that.
It can also be really fun. It can be really fun playing around in the space and seeing things and noticing. So it can seem like it's heavy, and that can make it appear more of a challenge to do. But having fun with it has also created the biggest shifts. Kids learn through play. It's the same with adults. If we just play with it and look at it from a frame of playfulness, then that's when shifts will also happen.
Now, there's also a lot of misconceptions around the idea of playfulness as well. Can you just elaborate a little bit more on finding that value of fun, engagement, connection, and playfulness through this process, and how it can really help you find more of your own personality and who you are?
That's an interesting question. For me, I enjoy being like it's fun. Like I'm not sure of anybody who doesn't really enjoy being fun or having fun, and that is again different for everybody. It's not the same for everyone. It's funny when you look at if you think about dating sites and they go, I want somebody who's funny. And it's like, that's a very subjective. So it's about finding what works for you as an individual as well, and what you enjoy doing in that space. And that takes trial and error. And sometimes you can go to events and things and think this is going to be amazing. And then you come out and gone, that just wasted a whole bunch of time and effort. But again, looking at it as a way of, I'm just checking, I'm trying to find something. It could be, and for me, like the playfulness is like, I could go to this and I could absolutely be bored or not waste my time, or I could find something really amazing and connections and just, and take it as like, this is an experience that I'm currently experiencing in this moment. And I can either take it and not enjoy it, or I can choose to go, all right, let's see what I can do to have some fun here. Because I'd rather have fun than not in my life now. I spent too many years very sad and depressed at myself, so I'd much rather be happier now.
Yeah, and it's a choice, right? You get to choose whether you want to have fun or not.
Yeah, I mean, the reality is things like the word fun and happiness and sadness ultimately are a construct, and how we each perceive what that is can be different to a degree, but it is also a construct. So we can play with that and how we look up and how we choose to see those. So, because it's not real, you can't hand me a plate full of happiness.
That would be kind of cool, though, wouldn't it?
I can identify like a really yummy roast lamb meal as something that I personally enjoy, and I have decided to label as a plate of happiness. But you can't hand me an actual physical plate of happiness.
I can just picture a cheesecake on a plate. Well, Helen, I've thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. We are going to wrap it up here, and I'm glad that we've got to uncover quite a bit. There's so much more that we could keep exploring and keep diving down.
It's an iceberg. It's a never-ending iceberg, I've discovered.
Yeah, and we've just touched the tip of it. Now, we don't want people to be like the Titanic. So if there are people who want to explore what's under the water, God, I love going through the metaphor. If you want to explore more of what's going under the water, see, now this is fun for me, then Ellen, how can people connect with you, find out more, and start this conversation of bringing more fun, more joy, more connectivity, more personal or personality back into their lives?
Okay, so I have my website, which is kolibricura.com.au. So I'll spell that KOLIBRICURA. So my website is there, and on there is a button to click in for an introductory call if you'd like to have a conversation with me, and just we can have see what you're interested in, even just to find out a little bit more information. And if you're interested in having any sessions or whatnot, we can then move into a call from there. Otherwise, connect up with me on Instagram under Helen Francis Official. I also have Facebook, Helen Francis, and Facebook page Colibri Cura. So lots of spaces you can connect up. Feel free to send me messages if you need on the socials, and I will also get back to you there.
Awesome. Thank you, Helen. It's been a pleasure to have you on the BX podcast. I've thoroughly enjoyed our conversation to all of its great depths. See, iceberg. And thank you for being on the BX podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been heaps of fun.
That wraps it up for today's episode of the BX podcast. You can get more of the show by simply tapping the follow or subscribe button on your favorite podcast app. To join us at a live and in-person or online event, head over to bxnetworking.com/locations. That's bxnetworking.com/locations to find a meeting near you. We look forward to talking to you next time on the BX podcast.